Lucy, I've got something fun to read to you. This is from someone emailing the podcast about SEO. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Look, you're probably getting SEO pitches from people who've never actually grown a podcast. I'm not going to waste your time with that.
Thank goodness.
I run a crawler that tracks 300,000 podcast keywords daily. There's a whole bunch of stuff about all the keywords that we're not rating for that we probably should be rating for. Straight talk. You've got 0 algorithmic recommendations and 3 visibility signals. That's decent baseline traction, Lucy. But decent is the enemy of successful.
Oh.
The podcasts that blow up from your position don't do it by accident. They figure out what 5 to 7 keywords the target audience actually searches for, then ruthlessly optimizes everything for those. I'm going to skip a bit here, just to the last bit. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You don't know me. But if you want to see the actual data, see what you rank for, where the gap is, it's Pod SEO. No trial, no demo call, no bullshit. Either the data is useful or it's not. Your call, Andrea.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Andrea, for your offer of services.
Oh, P.S. Go fuck yourself. I added that last bit.
You added that bit. That was you adding a bit of flourish. Okay.
Yeah, I was editorialising.
Yeah. Are we going to employ their services?
No, I'm too scared. I'm too scared of Andrea.
You don't know me.
Yeah. I don't know her.
I'm going to employ someone I don't know.
Just amazing. Like, that really grabbed my attention. If you hadn't guessed already, folks, you're listening to the O7 podcast. I'm Tay and I'm joined by my co-host, Lucy Alfred. Lucy, how you doing?
I'm great, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Moving on. This week, the film in question is Charlie Wilson's War. Written by Aaron Sorkin, directed by Mike Nichols, starring Tom Hanks, Julia Roberts, Amy Adams, and the phenomenal Philip Seymour Hoffman, PSH.
Imagine the films we'd have had he survived.
Imagine what this film would be like without him.
Well, I don't think it would be half as good.
Yeah. Charlie Wilson manages to funnel the largest amount of money into any covert operation that the CIA has ever committed to, that we know of, right?
And certainly up to that point in history.
Yeah. And with the help of Julia Roberts, who plays Joanne Herring, who is a socialite but with political connections, and Gus Africotto, played by Philip Seymour Hoffman, who is a very punchy CIA guy, they basically spearhead a huge amount of money going into Afghan Mujahideen or Afghan rebels via Pakistan intelligence services, which helps turn the tide against those damn communists. It's a biting political satire because Aaron Sorkin wrote it, also glosses over quite a lot, but we'll get into it. And to top all of that, it's set in the 80s.
Yeah, it's in great 80s fashion.
Yeah. Did you like it, Lucy?
I loved it. I really enjoyed it.
Did you?
Yeah, I couldn't stop thinking about it.
Oh, no.
Why? Did you not?
Well, it's a tricky one. I find it a tricky one. We focus a fair bit on whether or not a film has stood the test of time from 2007. And this film, unfortunately, is a victim, I think, of the age of information, in that there's an awful lot you can either stumble upon or just research. It is based on a true story, but there's a lot that's been omitted.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything inaccurate in this film, but there's a lot that is just kind of like left hanging. And so it's kind of like with hindsight that it doesn't hold up. But that said, I watched it and I enjoyed it. And it is, you can't say that it's not an entertaining film.
And it's definitely a good one to watch in today's climate with everything going on in Iran. Yeah,
the parallels are not immediately obvious, but there are definitely some parallels between what's happening at the moment in Iran and what the US has been up to for decades at this point.
Yeah, and I think also like the what was quite stark was the difference in the way that the Congress people were talking about the situation in Afghanistan. Not straight away, but once everything started to kick off with what Charlie Wilson was enacting, versus the way that that part of the world is talked about in American media today. But we will get into it because there's some really nice pieces that I do want to talk about that are interesting watching back with today's lens. But yeah, overall I did enjoy it. Got some things I didn't enjoy, which I'd also like to talk about. But yeah, I thought it was a good film. I love pretty much anything Tom Hanks does. I described it to my boyfriend as like it's just a nice character movie, even though they were real people. They were really well rounded, really well fleshed out. You could really get on board with them.
Yeah. Oh dear, we're going to say some things about Tom Hanks. I'm not sure we're going to come out of this unscathed. This might be the wokest episode ever in terms of like the age of information and social media. Lucy, tell me what you liked about this film.
I loved the script, punchy dialogue, very funny. The staging was excellent. There was that particularly excellent scene that was just stolen from the stage, whereby Avocados and Charlie Wilson are discussing what was happening in Afghanistan. It was the first time they'd met. And meanwhile, news was coming in that Charlie Wilson had been taking cocaine with exotic dancers, strippers, models in a jacuzzi. And Charlie Wilson didn't want Avocados to hear the conversation, and so every time Charlie Wilson's aides came in, Avocados had to leave through the other door, and it was a farce. It was absolutely brilliant. And then it culminated in us finding out that Avocados had actually bugged the bottle of scotch he'd given Charlie Wilson, so he'd heard everything anyway, so it didn't matter. It's brilliant, really brilliant.
Yeah, it's very funny.
Very, very funny. Like, it is actually quite a funny film. There's a lot of humour in it. And there's some beautiful, beautiful shots and takes. The one that stands out to me is the scene where Joanne is reapplying her makeup after her and Charlie Wilson have had sex midway through her party. And she is looking in a little makeup mirror doing her mascara, and then you can see in the big mirror him in the bedroom behind her, and it's just delicious. Absolutely brilliant. Gorgeous
with a safety pin.
Yeah, she was doing it with a safety pin. Yeah,
it's psycho.
I know, but then Phil pointed that out, and I was like, my mum does that. My mum does it. Yeah, she does. Insane. She does. She separates her eyelashes with a safety pin. Bonkers. I would never. Yeah, so there's some really, really beautifully framed scenes. There's also a scene, it's actually really towards the end, where they've sort of won. Charlie Wilson has won the election, and he and Avocados are standing on a balcony, and Avocado says, okay, we've won this, but it's, the next situation is about to occur. I think the line is like, the crazies are coming in, and obviously that's foreshadowing the future that we obviously experienced in the 90s and the 2000s. But it cuts out and then cuts away, and then it just looks like, all I can really describe it as is like a David Hockney painting. It's really sort of brutalist architecture. Everything's really angular. It's got beautifully lit. Again, you can see the party behind them on the balcony. It's just delicious. So yeah, some great cinematography, excellent script writing, and as I said, like very well-rounded characters that you can kind of get behind. Thought the depiction of Afghanistan at the time was okay. So yeah, I actually really enjoyed this film. Also loved Amy Adams. She's just excellent, isn't she? She's so gorgeous and just brilliant.
I like Amy Adams. I'm not quite sure what she was there to do in this film. It's probably worth pointing out that Charlie Wilson, famous for his love of women and booze, he's got a sort of a coterie of cute young women. They're all sort of busty bunny girl types, except for Amy Adams, and she is part of that group of women, it seems, but she's like the smart one. Or the one that is the ambitious one.
She is, and she's not the kind of stereotypical like girly boobs and tight skirts vibes, until the bit that I don't like, which is the depiction of women in the film. And so you're right, up until the point that I'm going to make, she is kind of the ambitious, studious one, but she is really enamoured by Charlie Wilson. She's just always sort of goo-goo-eyed at him, like, hanging on his every word. But she's not depicted in the way that the others are, until the first helicopters are shot down by Afghans using the thingy on the shoulder.
The stinger.
The shooty stinger.
Yep.
And she's about to deliver the news to him that there was a success. But you don't know what's about to happen, but she's walking down the corridor and the camera starts on her feet, on her stiletto heels, and slowly pans up her legs, then stays on her arse for too long and then moves up, and then you see it's her walking down the corridor, and then it cuts to the next scene. She's giving him the news to say that there was a success. But I was like, why is she now being objectified in this way? Because she's been characterised as not like this, and now she's just another sex symbol in the film, and I didn't like that. So yeah, obviously, I'm guessing it's true to life. I think that his female staff were known as Charlie's Angels.
That's right, yeah.
So obviously it is true to life, and it is redeemed in the scene that I was talking about earlier, where they're trying to manage the news that's about to break about his dalliances and misdemeanors. They are actually really professional and really on it and really effective, and so it is redeemed there. Like, yes, they're gorgeous and girly, but also they are pretty good at their jobs too. So, like I said, it wasn't all bad, but I think it would, for sure, that shot of Amy Adams walking down the corridor, I really just don't think that would be done now, because it wasn't even in context of like Charlie Wilson looking at her. It was purely the camera, and it was purely for the audience, and I just didn't like it. It's unnecessary.
Yeah, it's weird, the sort of farcical scene that you described, where the women exit stage left and then in shuffles Avocados. It's very strange how they're working together, because they're reading excerpts of either press reports about this scandal that they're trying to contain, or the agreed response, like the official statement from Charlie Wilson's office.
Yeah.
And I found it weird, because Amy Adams' character reads a bit of it, and then another girl reads a section of it as well. And I'm like, how does this work? How does this work, this statement? Have you all got to write a paragraph each or something? Very strange.
I guess it's just, in that case, it was lending itself to the theatrical side of, or the theatrical portrayal of it, because that would never happen in real life.
Yeah, the whole sort of womanizer thing is interesting. It's brought into contrast later on in the film, because there's a lot of shots of like Charlie Wilson all wet-eyed, and there's a point in the film where she gets married and he's sad. But it's not played for romance or anything like that. But the banter, it's got top bants. It's
got great bants, yeah, it really does. I laughed a lot actually throughout, so... it's not all miserable war film.
Yeah, no, it's Aaron Sorkin, isn't it? So he's not going to miss an opportunity to do jokes. Whether or not they come from him or the book that the screenplay is based on is up for debate. I haven't read that book. I would like to read it. But there's Julia Roberts' character has got a great line where she's walking past all the bunny girls and she just says sluts. Yeah. That was a bit I liked. I generally just thought that Philip Seymour Hoffman was so good in this. Unsurprisingly, that character, that guy, he was clearly not what the CIA would normally deem as their kind of guy, because he's a scrappy sort of street tough sort of guy, and they're used to like Ivy Leaguers, right?
Yeah.
And he's definitely not that. His introduction into the film is him smashing the window of his station chief, who's passed him over for a promotion, and then he smashes it again on the way out, which is pretty funny. And there's a lot of that. His dialogue is just like razor sharp all the way through, between his character and literally everybody else in the film.
There was one scene actually where I thought I could actually, the energy between Tom Hanks and Philip Seymour Hoffman was palpable, and I thought like, I would have loved to have like been on set whilst they were filming this scene, because they were properly bouncing off each other. The reaction seemed really natural. They seemed to be really like, it was a real like, like I said, back and forth, and they were really feeding off each other's energy. It was excellent. I can't actually remember which scene it was though. It was one specifically. I didn't make a note of it, unfortunately. That's actually a thing. If I get quite distracted by how much I'm enjoying the film, I don't make as many notes.
Oh, really?
Same difference with films that I'm just not enjoying at all.
Oh, I was hoping to interrogate your notes.
I have got quite a lot. I have got a few. But I did write, poor Emily Blunt had to get her boobs out to get this role.
Well, yeah, she's kind of blink and you miss it.
Yeah, 'cause in the early days of the Bluntmeister General.
It's a weird one for her because, like, she is literally in it in two scenes, barely dressed and fawning over Charlie Wilson. There's a weird bit part, given how we almost kind of see her as sort of British acting royalty now. Anyway, back to the film. Things I liked. Obviously, PSH is good in everything. The dialogue throughout is really great. I think that's it.
You liked all the same bits as me.
Julia Roberts is really great as well. Obviously, she's got some good lines.
Yeah.
I suppose it gives a fairly spot-on insight into how Congress works. And they're quite cynical about how Congress works, i.e. that it doesn't as well. The fact that they can just arbitrarily double budgets from like 5 to 10 million on this excursion to 500 million, which then doubles up because it's the costs are matched by Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
It's a very good, typically Sorkin-esque kind of depiction of politics in the US. I like those aspects of it.
Anything you didn't like? I've kind of gone over my stuff. Like, that really is a depiction of women. And also maybe those weird watery-eyed on the phone in the dark scenes that sort of didn't really seem to make much sense and didn't really propel the narrative.
Strap in. I've got a lot.
Oh my gosh, you've got a lot of stuff you didn't like.
Let's start with Charlie Wilson, right? So all those watery-eyed scenes, I'm surprised that they were absent in the start and the end of the film where he's receiving an award. He's kind of given a sort of honorary, I don't know, Victory Cross or something for his efforts to help combat communism. And the US and Pakistan had already laid a trap for the Soviets to invade Afghanistan. And Soviets at that point had already decided, look, this war is a waste of our time and resources. We should just quietly remove ourselves from Afghanistan. The Stinger missiles were a very late entry into this war, towards the sort of tail end of it. So I guess I'm getting into all the things that this film either takes some liberties with or just like flat out omits. The Stinger missile stuff, which is really the sort of focal point of the film. Essentially, the Soviets have these helicopters, these gunships that are just kind of laying waste to hundreds of thousands of Afghans, and the Afghans don't have any kind of anti-aircraft capability, and so Michael Vickers, quote unquote, invents the Stinger missile, which can take down these helicopters, and then that supposedly turns the tide of the war. I think the tide of the war was actually turning already at that point, but for the purposes of like Hollywood films, they do this. That's fine. You don't really get a sense of any of that. And I appreciate that it really is a really complicated story to tell. It's a Hollywood script, so we don't really get any of that. But it does omit a few characters I think should have been in there. Zbigniew Brzezinski, post-Soviet guy, he was the one who lobbied them to do all this stuff to back the Afghanis and to kind of create a lure for the Soviets to invade, because he knew that would bleed the Soviets of resources and effectively, like by proxy, combat communism, which is his lifelong mission. So he's never in this film. He's never mentioned, and he's not played by anybody. And more particularly, there is a guy called Gulbuddin Hekmatyar. He was the leader of one of the tribal factions. And that's the other thing this film doesn't get into, is just how factionalist the Afghans were. Yeah. They spent as much time killing each other as they did killing Russian soldiers. He was an absolute psycho. He massacred tens of thousands, all of which was known by the CIA, and all they did was, funnel more money into chiefly his outfit. And there's no mention of that in here. There's no mention of Osama bin Laden, even though he wouldn't have been like a key figure in this, really. He was there to fight. But, the rise of the Taliban, which is what kind of replaced the Afghan government once the Soviets had pulled out, and then their taking in of Al-Qaeda is what, precipitated 9/11, essentially.
Yeah.
None of that is in there. Although the scene that you mentioned earlier, the scene on the balcony between Charlie Wilson and Avocado. This is so easy to miss, but when Avocado says the crazies are coming into Kandahar, there is the sound of a plane flying overhead.
Oh wow!
And that was a nod to the 9/11 attacks,
right?
But that is so subtle. Like I did not notice that. I read about it and then was like, oh yeah, okay. But that's insane. Like that's an insane level of like Hollywood subtlety. Like who's going to get that? Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff that he didn't really talk about. After the sort of the quote unquote end of that war, there was another rebel called Ahmed Massoud who was lobbying for funds from the US to oust the Taliban and expel Al-Qaeda. But they couldn't compete with pro-Pakistan lobbyists. And chief among them was Charlie Wilson. And you don't really get a sense of any of that. You get one little kind of quote on a black slate at the end of this film talking about how, what they think that they did wrong. Apparently, Tom Hanks, this is where it gets ugly, but Tom Hanks was not comfortable with drawing a line between this film, his character, and 9/11. So that was all taken out.
Wow.
Because Tom Hanks wasn't comfortable with the whole 9/11 stuff.
Well, he didn't want people because he knew that people would think that he was somehow responsible because people can't disassociate the actor from the character.
Or he was doing it out of respect for Charlie Wilson, because even the book Charlie Wilson's War, the author George Krill talks about the line between the 90s in Afghanistan all the way through to the early noughties in the US, the establishment of the Taliban and the rise of Al-Qaeda within that country. And he theorizes that Charlie Wilson accepts to himself that he couldn't possibly have known, and that is his kind of get out of jail free card, is that he doesn't feel like he's responsible because he can't predict the future. In fact, Joanne Herring says exactly those words. She said in interviews later on, look, I couldn't predict the future. So these characters in real life don't feel any kind of culpability for the aftermath of what they had a hand in. They didn't cause it, right? But they were involved, and they did a very good job of raising a lot of money for the Afghan Mujahideen. But it seems like the actors playing them are respecting that and reflecting it in the film. And Tom Hanks was a producer on this film, so he definitely could have pushed for that aspect of it to be omitted, and I think that's what happened. Yeah,
I think in his defence, and I don't know if this actually happened. Have you read the book? It sounds like you have.
No.
All right. But Charlie Wilson seems to be the one pushing for the US to continue supporting Afghanistan. He said, we need to build a school, we need to do this, we need to do that. And then they say, well, no, done now, we're moving on to the next.
I think he definitely, and I don't think that was him trying to do, some sort of kind of redemptive move. I think he genuinely wanted to kind of keep money flowing into Afghanistan in order to kind of moderate things a bit and try to stop such an extreme regime from taking hold. But the CIA knew how extreme they were when they were funding them. It's not rocket science to figure out where that was going to go. I think that this is the singular sort of one-track mind of outfits like the CIA. Is they're thinking we're fighting communism, and then at the point at which they pull out, they're just going to pull out. You could argue that 2021 is an echo of that, right? Is that they fought this long war to try and kind of, stabilize Afghanistan, and then they just left, and that was it.
Exactly. Yeah, we were actually talking about that, and they did exactly the same thing a few years ago. That was awful. I suddenly remember those awful scenes of people hanging onto planes, just so awful. Yeah,
they left a lot of allies, people who had helped them and risked their lives to help them. They left them there.
I know, and then now look at the situation for everyone, not least the women and girls that are living there. It's just not great.
There's a lot to think about, but you don't necessarily get that from the film. And I feel like this is why it's a weird one that this is based on a true story, but there's so much truth that isn't in the story that you watch. And I think it's easier just to separate these two things out and watch the film as a sort of fun hour and 45 minutes, and then just, digest it and move on. And not do any homework about it, because you start scratching your head. And then this is what I meant at the start, where I said that this film suffers from the age of information, because it's so easy. The reason I knew a bit more than what this film depicts is because I'd listened to an excellent podcast called Blowback, and each season it covers a different aspect of US foreign policy. Season 4 it covers Afghanistan. So I knew who Gus Avocado was. I knew who Charlie Wilson was. And so it's a blessing and a curse to know that stuff, because then you start to get annoyed by watching this film. But I actually, in the watching, could separate myself from that and just kind of analyse what was enjoyable about it.
Yeah, so I didn't have that context, and so I just enjoyed it, as you said, for what it was.
Yeah.
Knowing that I'm sure some liberties were taken, but I knew it had actually happened. And
yeah, it's like when you either you or your partner, one's partner says something a bit out of line, and you think, I'm going to save that for later, and then we'll come back to that. That was how I felt when I was watching it.
Right, okay. Yeah. I didn't do anything like that. I didn't even think to be like, did this actually happen this way?
It sort of did happen that way, right? But there's a lot more to it.
Any themes that you want to go over?
I mean, I think we talked about it, right? But because it's based on a true story, it kind of eliminates any subtext. But I think the obvious ones are that empires eventually fall, and they seem to not learn any lessons from history.
Yeah. That kind of leads into what I was going to say, of that kind of like the theme of like we'll see mentality that sort of permeates throughout the film, particularly with that sort of looking back lens that we have, because we obviously know what happened and what happened after that. Obviously there's obviously the theme of the Cold War. Obviously a key theme, and you did touch on it, is about American politics as a rule, as a whole, like you said, about how Congress works or doesn't work. And obviously Aaron Sorkin, West Wing, he's kind of in it, isn't he?
Yeah.
So that all felt quite real and familiar.
It's just interesting how much it resonates now, now that the US has willingly been led into a war with Iran. So the parallels of it working alongside Pakistan and Pakistan's intelligence agencies, and Saudi Arabia, and all of these kind of proxies for a specific thing, feels like a fairly strong tie to now, where all of its allies are getting hammered by Iran, who has seen enough of their neighbours being kind of kind to the US and Israel, and is almost hitting the neighbours harder than it is. Well, it can't hit America, right? It can't hit the US, so it is striking Israel and anywhere that there's a US base, which is all it can do. And I guess the other thing is that the Charlie Wilson's War explores air power, right? Superior air power, and countering that. Firstly, you can't win a war with air power on its own, but you also can't win a war just by being able to counter the air power. I guess that works both ways, right? So the US can't really win a war with Iran just by bombing the shit out of Iran, because they will just kind of go underground and wait it out and absorb all the missiles, etc., and do as much damage as they can whilst America is restocking its arms. But at the same time, you can't... The Stinger missile, I guess, in the 80s is equivalent to the interceptors that they use now to intercept all of these missiles and drones. They're almost running out, right? So either side of that air power issue is not the lone solution to solving a conflict or winning a conflict. It's like, unfortunately, it's boots on the ground either locally the Mujahideen in that instance. In this instance, it might actually be American troops. So yeah, it was interesting to watch this film and with that kind of percolating away in the back of the head as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it for themes. It's like, when are you going to learn type stuff.
There is a Matt Haig novel called How to Stop Time, and it's about a man who ages very slowly.
Right.
He was born in the Tudor times, and he is now
like Sandman.
alive now.
It's
yeah.
Like Hob Gadlin.
Yeah. And he's part of an elite group of people that ages very slowly, and they all have to sort of keep in touch with each other, but they have to like stay semi underground, because obviously if people notice that they're not aging, shit starts to go down basically.
Yeah.
And I really remember vividly him talking about how he'd seen cycles of everything happening over the last 500 years that he'd been alive. For instance, wars, politics, leadership, the role different people play in society, blah, 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 blah. And he was like, people just never learn. He was like, I've just come to realise it's just part of like life, being a human.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of, it ties into both our theme section and our kind of anything more or less relevant. But obviously this film was made in 2007, post 9/11, looking back at something that happened in the 80s and sort of foreshadowing the situation we're in now. And I think for us sitting here watching it, particularly like my generation, that there's like a common meme that goes around about all of the different disasters we've seen since we were about 11 years old. It's been constant. And you kind of just think like, how, like, is this as bad as it gets, or is something else like even more awful going to happen to society? And I think this film does quite a good job of alluding to that. I think, like you say, it could have been done better and less subtly at the end, but perhaps, like you said, they didn't want to hammer it home too much and make it all seem like it was their fault. But I think that element of it was a little bit of an uncomfortable watch, because you're sitting here like in it at the moment, and it just seems so similar. We've just sort of advanced a bit more in arms technology, but yeah, it's still like you say, it's going to come down to boots on the ground. It's going to come down to other nations working together to stop this.
Here's hoping, yeah.
But yeah, I think that's my anything more or less relevant take on things. What about yours?
It is depressing to sort of see an example of what feels like just, history replaying itself, only stupider. I feel like, as kind of slimy as Charlie Wilson is, you feel like he could hold his own in a debate and speak cogent sentences, whereas not just Trump, but like a lot of Trump acolytes these days just like can't even string a sentence together.
Yeah.
So it's almost nice watching Charlie Wilson's war,
yeah,
like compared to the news.
Yeah, I know what you
Christ.
mean, because he's obviously depicted as a womanizer and a bit of a Lothario, blah blah blah. But actually, he can then switch, and he knows his stuff. Like he's ex-military. He understands military situations. Right from the beginning, when he's in the jacuzzi, he's watching the news and he's like, why are they there? What's going on? Why has he got a beard? Like, he understands that that's strange and it shouldn't be that way. So yeah, he is, even though he's a bit of a kind of happy-go-lucky guy, he's an accomplished politician and military man, which, I mean, Trump didn't even go to war.
Neither did Charlie Wilson. I mentioned Blowback, the podcast that had kind of tipped me off to this stuff ahead of time. And then I watched a YouTube video today by a channel called Burn the Books. At the very end, I think George Krill, who wrote the book, talks about this as well. Charlie Wilson was too young to serve in the Korean War. And he, I think for some reason, I think it might have been his entry into politics, but he didn't fight in Vietnam. And so the Afghan conflict was almost like his proxy. He'd never got the chance to kill communists in some kind of anti-communist. If you think about it from the US perspective, every war has been about killing communists, right? He never got his chance to kill communists. And so one of the things that was driving him was his inadequacy about that. And that is like terrifying. And so when you talk about Trump enacting his own militarist fantasies now, I think it's more like Pete Hegseth than Trump. But the fact that he, dodged a draft, I think there's probably something in it. Fuck. There's all kinds of stuff that is interesting about this film in 2026. Not least the amount that it skips over. Are there any fun facts about this film, really?
There are some fun facts, yes, that I have managed to glean from the interwebs.
Thank God.
Despite the bleak topic. We have already talked about how funny it is, how funny the film is. But anyway, fun facts about the film. Philip Seymour Hoffman, R.I.P., was nominated for an Oscar for his role. Who actually won that year?
Tom Wilkinson was nominated for Michael Clayton. Boo! Hal Holbrook for Into the Wild. Casey Affleck for the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. And Javier Bardem for No Country for Old Men. Who do you think won?
Javier.
Correct. Philip Seymour Hoffman was nominated in 2008 for Father Brendan Flynn in the film Doubt. That's
a good film. I've seen that. More fun facts. The real Charlie Wilson reportedly loved Tom Hanks's portrayal of himself.
Go figure. I imagine that Joanne Herring also liked Julia Roberts' depiction of her.
Yes. Yeah, well, she's a babe. Was she a babe in real life? I've not seen her.
Well, it's hard to tell. I saw a video of her in 2007, and at that point she's like, I don't know, in her 80s and she kind of looks like Joan Rivers a bit.
Well, she's got that vibe of her sort of in those days.
Yeah.
Her look and her costuming, etc.
Yeah.
And final fun fact, which isn't really that fun, it was one of the last films directed by Mike Nichols.
Oh, was it? Mike Nichols, of course, has done tons of amazing films. Graduate, Catch-22, Working Girl, The Birdcage, everyone's favourite, Robin Williams film, Primary Colours.
All right, Tay, we've come to the moment. Drum roll, please. You can tell me off doing drum roll.
What's happening? What
rating are you going to give this film?
I've thought about this. It's 2.5 for me. I'm going to let history run roughshod over what is an enjoyable film. So it gets some, I would say it gets up to like a 3.5 for the quality of the film, right? The quality of the writing, the performances, the endeavour. I didn't really pick up on like any frills from a production point of view for this film. So, it's kind of workmanlike in that sense, but the writing is incredible. The acting is superb. The dialogue is fantastic. So that would have carried it up to 3.5. And then my annoyance at having to research things that it missed out has knocked off at least a whole point.
Wow.
It's a 2.5.
Okie dokie.
Yeah, guilty.
Savage. Well, I didn't know any of that stuff.
No.
So
you shouldn't let it affect your
I'm not going to let
rating.
It affect my
rating.
So
it's a 3? It's a 3, is it?
I'm going to give it 3.5.
Oh, right. Is that all?
Maybe 3.8, actually.
3.8. What are you doing?
Okay, 3.5. 3.5.
It's not a thing.
It is now? No, 3.5.
Yeah, fair enough. Like I say, it's unfortunate. If this was just complete fiction, this would be a 3.5, 4-star film.
I agree.
Right? It's unfortunate that Aaron Sorkin is interested in politics. and that this is ostensibly a vehicle for somebody who, did some questionable stuff, and then is not really brought to task for that in this film. And so it's a bit mean. I guess I am judging it on the merits, but they are gifted by hindsight.
Sure.
Which seems unfair, but we live in an unfair world. So,
well, we are watching it in 2026.
Yeah, 2.5, 3.5. We're not really meeting up to the expectations of Rotten Tomatoes because this consensus was pretty favourable.
Was it?
82%.
Whoa.
73% for the audience. So, it's in the pantheon.
Yeah, it's in the pantheon.
Lucy, any recommendations?
Yes, I have a recommendation.
All right.
It is a comedy series created by Shonda Land of Bridgerton fame.
Shonda Rhimes.
Shonda Rhimes. Big up Shonda Rhimes. Called The Residents. And it is about a murder that has happened in the White House.
In the White House.
And
on Netflix.
Yeah, on Netflix. It is really great.
I know, I've been meaning to watch it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've heard good things.
I also can recommend How to Get to Heaven from Belfast. Have I talked about this already? I don't think I have.
No.
How to Get to Heaven from Belfast is another Netflix series written by the writer whose name escapes me, who did Derry Girls. And it tracks 3 friends who are from Belfast, and they get embroiled in a mystery. That's what I'm going to say. And what I loved about it was, we just don't really see that much Northern Irish content in the mainstream. Obviously, we had Derry Girls. I've not actually seen Derry Girls. I want to go back and watch it now because I really enjoyed this. So there's that. Loved their accents. I was just trying to emulate the accent the whole time. Really struggled. But also, on a more serious note, it is a sort of love story to the island of Ireland. So it's not just all about Northern Ireland. They go into Southern Ireland. There's even a few characters that speak Irish, and it's kind of everything all working together, and how the different cultures mash up and work together and sometimes work against each other. There's quite a few funny nods to the Troubles, which isn't funny, but the way it's handled is funny. Just brilliant. A little bit surreal. It kind of, again, is a nod to the kind of mysticism and magic that still sort of permeates through Irish culture. Also, of course, Catholicism. And then just, young, about to say young women. We're not young. Millennial women, millennial friendships. And what they look like today versus, when they were kids. So really recommend that. Enjoyed it a lot.
Blimey. Yeah. It's a lot.
2 recs.
I'm going to do 2 recs. They're both YouTube channels. Mm-hmm. One of which is one I've referenced, Burn These Books. They're how long is it? Hour and 40-minute essay about Charlie Wilson's war and how the CIA destroyed Afghanistan is really good. Visually, it's, it's fine, but the content, what you hear, is really extraordinary, and it saves you 10 hours of listening to season 4 of Blowback. But Blowback, the podcast, is also really excellent. Really great use of archival stuff in a podcast. It's very ambitious, and it is a great history kind of pop culture podcast. And the other thing I want to recommend is another YouTube channel, which I've just discovered, called Mosaics in Time. Mm-hmm. And it's one dude. He's got a good mic now, so check out the later videos. He's done a few videos about the film Sicario, and but one about blocking, specifically just about how the shot tells you the whole story. Mm-hmm. So how Sicario cinematography conveys moral corruption. 10 minutes and you're done. It's really, really good. Yeah, really excellent. So it's a very long form one and a very short form one.
Love that. Thank you. Thanks for the recs.
You're welcome. I think that means that we have done it.
We've done it.
Bruce, we done it. Folks, thanks for bearing with us while we rewatch Charlie Wilson's War. Yeah. Actually, no, this is the first time I watched this film.
Me too. I think I'd heard about it.
In spite of my historical nitpicking, which conveniently only ties in with what I know. It's like that one time. Have you ever dreamt that you're on Mastermind and somehow all the things on Mastermind are exactly the things that you know and nothing else?
No.
Me neither, but like you can imagine it, right? This was a bit like that for me. So I appreciate you suffering through that. When I get on my high horse.
Yeah, it was just a vehicle for you just to like brain dump everything out of your head onto the world.
No. Yeah, thanks for bearing with us. If you've not seen this film, it is worth a watch. It is, on the surface of things, a very well-made and fun and funny film, even though the subject matter is quite serious. You've got the added bonus, if you want, of being historically outraged at all the stuff that it sort of glosses over.
If you happen to have it in granular detail.
If you've got the time.
Yeah. I would say the way I describe it is a great film for exactly the way that I consumed it, which was on a Saturday night, had a nice day, chilled out, had some snacks, got stuck into a film you could really sit and absorb, that didn't challenge you too much, but also told a good story.
I think it does a good job of like speaking of doffing its cap to a viewer's sensibilities and intelligence, right? Without being a Christopher Nolan film.
Yeah.
So, you can say, oh yeah, I watched a really interesting film. It seemed to resonate with things happening in the world right now.
I'm surprised you didn't do your posh voice.
Do you want a biscuit? What, the critic's voice?
Yeah.
I want to have some critics on this show, so like I don't want to alienate them too much. Yeah. Okay, well, we'll leave it there then. I think, folks, if you want to get in touch with us, if you've got some really aggressive email comms that you want to send us, then you can do so at 07podcast@gmail.com. Try and make it as abusive as possible because that's how we like it, apparently. You can follow us on the socials if you want to chuck in a quid. We won't mind. You can do that at patreon.com/07podcast. And Lucy, any last words before we say goodbye?
Nada.
Then goodbye.
Goodbye.